Welcome back to the Bookish Wolf. I'm Josh. This is Freya. Today we'll be talking about Pet Sematary by Stephen King. This was my third Stephen King novel, and going into it, I had never watched the movies or the show. I knew the title, I knew there was something about a cat coming back to life, but that was pretty much it. A brief summary of this story is Lewis Creed's a doctor who moves into a small town in Maine with his wife Rachel, their daughter Ellie, and their very young son Gage, and the family cat Church. Their new home seems to be perfect, except for one thing. The highway that's in front of their house constantly has trucks racing past it. Their elderly neighbor Judd Crandall quickly befriends them the moment they move in and introduces them to a place behind their house in the woods called the Pet Sematary. It's exactly what it sounds like, a cemetery where generations of local kids bury their pets. At first, it's oddly charming, but there's just something not right about it. Then Judd reveals that beyond that pet cemetery is an older burial ground with a dark history. According to the local stories, anything buried there comes back. So the one thing I do wish I would have changed about the reading experience of this is that I wish I didn't read Stephen King's intro to the novel. So King's introduction hinted at the fates of some of the important characters. So instead of simply enjoying the family and getting attached to them naturally, I spent the entire book waiting for tragedy to happen. Every happy moment just felt like a countdown. King already does an incredible job building the feeling of inevitable doom. I just wish I had experienced that naturally instead of accidentally spoiling part of that journey. My favorite character by far is Judd. I don't know if it's because I've always had a close relationship with my grandfathers, but I connected with him immediately. He's kind, he's patient, and he feels genuine. Every conversation between Judd and Lewis was enjoyable, minus the part of him showing Lewis the burial ground that would end up tempting Lewis to dig up his dead son, which comes back as an evil corpse. But Pet Sematary isn't about zombies. It's about grief. King does a great job laying out how grief affects people throughout their lives. For Rachel, Lewis's wife, her memories of her sister Zelda are some of the hardest parts of this book to read. As a child, Rachel watched her older sister slowly die from spinal meningitis, and those memories stayed with her throughout her whole life. She spends years trying to avoid talking about death. She even tries to protect Ellie from thinking about it. The part that stood out was when Rachel admitted after everything Zelda went through, part of her felt relieved when Zelda died. That may sound awful at first, but I don't think King wrote that to make Rachel seem cruel. He was showing that sometimes when someone has suffered for so long, that death can feel like the end of that pain. Accepting that doesn't mean you love them any less. Lewis shows us another side of death. As a doctor, he understands death better than most people. On his very first day working at the university, a student dies in his arms after being hit by a car. The student speaks to him with injuries that Lewis knows should make that impossible. This is our first clue that something supernatural is happening in this story. But Lewis still tries to explain everything logically. When Church, their cat, gets hit by a truck, Lewis follows Judd to the burial site. He sees things and hears noises that aren't there. He tries to talk himself into thinking that he's just imagining everything because of the darkness and how tired he is. Judd even has explanations for these events. When the dead cat comes back home after being buried, he simply convinces himself that maybe Church just wasn't dead, despite having the broken neck he examined. However, Church wasn't acting like himself anymore. Judd tells Lewis things buried there don't come back right and tend to lead to making things worse. However, Lewis convinces himself that maybe the rules don't apply to him. So when Gage is hit by a truck on the highway in front of their house, Lewis thinks maybe his son will be different. Maybe this time things will work out. And that's what grief does. It convinces people they're the exception. It makes them believe that one impossible choice might somehow undo the worst moments of their life. King does an amazing job showing how grief traps people inside the endless what-if questions. Lewis thinks, what if I had been seconds faster? What if I had made one different decision? What if I could have just one more chance? Those thoughts slowly consume Lewis until he can't see reality anymore. The dreams of an alternate reality every night after that. A reality where he can see the full life of Gage, just to wake up to the world Gage isn't in. Reading the intro took away the shock of this moment. I knew Gage was destined to get hit, and so there was just no emotional payoff for me, and that's my fault. Also, a reason why the book never felt like a horror. When I was younger, I lost my father and my best friend 6 months apart from each other, and so reading this book reminded me of those nights and those dreams where someone you lost is suddenly alive again. For a moment, everything feels normal, and then you just wake up. I had moments where I thought I'd do anything to have them back. And that's the question this book asks. Would you? What would you actually do for the impossible? Even knowing the outcome wouldn't be what you think, would you risk it? Lewis does risk it. Even when he learns what Gage did to Rachel, Lewis knows he can't fix Gage. But maybe next time will be different. Maybe Rachel will be different, so he buries Rachel. And that's what makes Pet Sematary memorable. Not the supernatural, but the emotional elements. Bringing back the dead is the selfishness in us. We don't want them gone, but we don't ever think maybe it's best for them. Just like putting down a pet. We don't ever want to do it, but it may be the only way they won't have pain. Don't worry, Freya's not sick or anything. There's only a few negatives about the book. The ending, the story spent hundreds of pages slowly building that tension, and then everything happens very quickly in the last 100 pages. Stephen King had said he never wanted this book published, and I wonder if that's part of the reason the ending feels rushed. The supernatural monster, villain, bad guy also felt like it appeared out of nowhere. We knew there were supernatural things happening, but for it to become like a monster, I just didn't understand. Compared to the emotional story about grief, the villain didn't really interest me. Maybe Stephen King's style of horror just isn't what gets me, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna watch the movies or the shows. I'm terrified of horror movies because of the jump scares, and that's the one thing I love about books. You know the jump scares are coming before the jump scares because we're reading them. Overall, we enjoyed the book. I love Judd as a character, and I think the themes about grief and acceptance are very powerful in this story. Being that I've been through them, I just didn't find it particularly scary. So Pet Sematary gets a 6 out of 10. If you've read it, I'd love to know your thoughts about it. Did the book actually scare you? Did it help you with grief? Let me know in the comments, and we will see you next time. In the beginning, I'll try to be spoiler free. In the beginning,